Evangelist I'm the education evangelist at Google. And I want to talk a little bit about some principles around change, around transformation, around what we're doing in some of the space. I don't know if some of you got a chance to hear JR talk about the things that we're doing with expeditions. I'm not going to talk very much about that. I want to put up some contact information. I'm pretty active on Twitter, like I'm sure like all you guys are, like Jeffrey is over there. You walk in late, man, I'm going to call you out. And more focused around some of the things that are going on in education, lots of cool things. The Google for Education team has a Twitter account. They have a blog post. They have a great presence on Google Plus with some good information that's out there. When we talk about what we're trying to do in education from a transformation perspective, we want to transform what learning looks like, and we want to empower teachers and students with technology, right? We don't believe that technology is the silver bullet. We don't believe that technology is what saves schools, but technology is a powerful and enabling capability. And we do this in lots of different areas. We have, for example, a philosophy internally that our team, and some of you might be working with our teams at Google, that focuses on what are the transformation elements that you need to focus on, like making sure that our superintendents understand the vision and what they're focused on, and understand the culture, the technology, the pedagogy, the technology that they're going to be using in their schools, the community that they're engaged in, right? So that it's not just, how many Chromebooks do you need, or, how many Google Apps users you're using, but our teams are working with education leaders across the world to think through the big picture of what we're trying to do. We're building tools from feedback and from teachers and students, whether it's Google Classroom or Google Apps that many of our schools are using, or whether, and JR talked about this earlier, about taking this idea of empowering students and engaging them with technology so that they can have experiences that they could never have before. So we're doing those types of things, but the reason we ask ourselves why we do these things and why you guys are here is because of the power that education has. Oh, I forgot to mention that we also do some professional development work that's available for teachers around how to use Google tools and how to use some of the methodologies that we have, some great programs that we have around computer science. So lots of cool things like that are available. But the reason we do these things is because of how important education is. And I bring my passion to this because it's a personal story for me, right? I was born and raised as a first-generation American in Hell's Kitchen, New York. Any New Yorkers in the house? All right, okay, not this Hell's Kitchen that you find today. The one you didn't go into in the 70s and 80s, right? The old school Hell's Kitchen, where it wasn't the nicest neighborhood to grow up. My mother came here, like many people came to New York from all over the world, escaping poverty, government oppression, showed up in New York. I was born in New York. So I was a typical student. I didn't know what my situation was, because kids don't know, but I grew up on welfare and food stamps and social services and all those kinds of programs that are available to our kids. I grew up with that around me. I showed up at PS 111 and they said, "Welcome to PS 111," and I said, "Okay." So I had to learn English. And so I did not want to be in Hell's Kitchen. I wanted out of Hell's Kitchen, and education was my way out. And so I got my high school degree, I got my college degree, I went to graduate school, and here I am standing in front of you, right? That's the power that education has. And the great thing for folks like me that got that chance, I get the question all the time, like, how did you get out? And the sad thing is, well, I shouldn't say the sad thing. I would like to believe that I'm some super genius, and so that's why I'm the one that got out. But the truth is, it was luck, right? Some of it is luck. You get your education, and then you have to have some luck. And our job is to get luck out of the way, right? It should just be the hard work and the education. And we have these milestone moments where you kind of see what happens in your life and how you get to where you are. And I had one of those moments a couple of months ago, last summer, when the First Lady of the United States asked me to come speak to about 150 kids about the power of education. And I said, let me check my calendar. No, you don't say that, right? You show up. And so I said, yeah, absolutely, I'll come talk to students. It's my favorite thing to do. On Friday, I'm going to be in front of about 600 students in Chicago talking to them about the power of education and what they can do. and what they're bringing to the table. So I love talking to students. So I said, absolutely. I'm speaking, the first lady asked me to do this. I thought I'd show up and be speaking in some, conference room with some folding chairs in the basement somewhere. And I showed up and they said, no, you're speaking in the East Wing of the White House. And I'm like, no, I'm not doing that. And so I walk in, and it's this surreal experience for those of you who haven't had a chance to visit the East Room of the White House, where you see the Kennedy portrait, and you say to the guy who's guiding you around, like, is that the Kennedy portrait? And the guy's like rolling his eyeballs because he gets that question all the time. And he's like, yeah, that's the Kennedy portrait. And I'm like, is it real? Like, you have those kinds of questions, and I'm like, where are we doing this? Where is this happening? And they say, oh, you're going into the East Room of the White House. And again, I'm like, yeah, there's no way in hell that I'm doing that. I'm not going in there. So eventually they forced me in there, and I'm standing in the green room of the White House. And here, I'm standing in the green room of the White House, and there's this doorway, and the window's right there, and you're looking out at the monument, and I'm looking at the monument from inside the White House, and I'm looking at that hardwood floor that's right in front of you, and you're like, and you start thinking about all the presidents, all the people who stood in that spot before they walked in the East Room of the White House, and I'm like, I'm some ghetto kid from New York, and I'm standing in the spot, and they need to put a railing there because your knees get weak as if you're about to walk in the East Room of the White House, and then this is what it looks like. And it looks like one of those things that you do at the fair, where you superimpose yourself. And you have the George Washington portrait, and you have the gold curtains behind you, and you walk up to the podium, and I look out, because I hadn't had a chance to hang out in a room and prep it and to see what it feels like to be in there, and you see that red rug, and you see it in front of you, and you think, oh, that's where that rug is, because you just don't know where that rug is, and where the president comes out and says, we killed bin Laden, and then disappears. And so you're looking in there, and you're like, I'm inside the television set, right? I'm inside the television set. And then you look down at that microphone, and they had set up that for me to speak to these students, and you look down at that microphone, and you think about how powerful that microphone is and what you can say to that microphone. And again, you think some ghetto kid from New York is standing there in the East Room of the White House. I can say anything that I want into that microphone. And the New Yorker, all I want to do is scream Baba Booey into that microphone. And the reason why I'm here today is because I didn't. But it's that surreal experience that you have. That's the real power that we have with education, right? That's what education does. It does that for our students. But the question, and when I talk to teachers, I tell them all the time that the power isn't just to the students that we face in our classroom. That power goes on for generations and generations and generations, because our teachers are going to have impact on students that they will never meet in their entire life. That's the real power that education has. And I know this, again, from personal experience, because now I have my kids. And my daughter hates this picture, or does not like me sharing this picture, because she assumes that you guys assume that that's her kid, and it's not. I have one about every 10 years or so. And so that's my 23-year-old daughter, my 15-year-old son, and my 1.5-year-old daughter, right? Yes, I don't like kids. And my 23-year-old in this picture, as you can see, is graduating from college, and we never talked about college. It never came up. It was never a conversation that we had. We never talked about whether she was going to go to college or not. She just assumed she was going to college, because there's no way she could ever live in a world where I went to college and she didn't go to college. She's way too competitive for that. She can't live in a world where I have a master's degree and she doesn't, right? She assumes she's going to have a master's degree. She assumes I'm paying for it, but that's a good problem to have, right? Right? That's the real power that education has, is that we can do that kind of thing where the impact that we have for kids goes on for generations and generations and generations. And so if that's true, we got to get it right, right? We got to make sure we take it seriously, and we got to get it right, because we're preparing kids for jobs that don't exist. We're preparing kids to have skills and to focus on things that we don't even know about yet. I'm working in a job that didn't exist when I graduated college, let alone high school. In 1972, 23% of the jobs required some kind of post-secondary education. Today, we're close to 60%, and Bill Gates talked about that today, about what the jobs of the future and what they're going to require, and advanced skills, and all the things that we're going to need. And so how do we make sure that we do that? Now, technology is an unbelievably strong enabling and supporting capability, but we've been talking about technology forever, right? The future of technology and the impact that computers have is here now, right? The future of what we can do with technology is here. You've seen some of the things. 71% of the STEM field jobs are in computer science. We've seen some of the numbers around in the next 20 years, in the next 10 years, there are going to be 1 million computer science jobs, but yet we're only graduating 8% of people with computer science backgrounds, right? And we did a survey with parents, and I encourage you to go see what we did this under our computer science banner. We talked to parents, and we talked to what they want, talked to parents about what they want their kids to learn, and they want their kids to learn computer science, and yet only 1 in 4 schools are offering computer science as a possibility for them to take a course, right? We need to focus on it. The future, this idea that computer world is in the future is not true. It's here today, and we've seen the numbers and the fact that if you have a computer science degree, you make $75,000 a year versus just a regular college degree that makes $40,000 a year, right? So the future of those skills that we're talking about, those jobs of the future, they're here right now in every industry, every place, and everything that we do. So the role of technology is part of our lives. But we've been talking about technology in education forever, right? First, it was television that was motion pictures were going to revolutionize education. TVs were going to revolutionize education, and computers we've been talking about since the 60s. Right? I remember when I was in 8th grade 100 years ago, I took a computer class because computers were going to be important in my future, and I took a class and I learned how to program in BASIC, which is not a skill that's necessary anymore, but I learned how to program in BASIC, and it took me about 9 months to write code, and I learned how to make a bird fly across the screen on the Commodore 64, right? So computers we've been talking about forever. Why is it different this time? Why do we need to think about computing from a different perspective? And I'm going to propose 3 quick things. Number 1 is all the great research that we have, all the evidence that we have about what good learning looks like, how it can be engaging, how it can be relevant, how it has to be personal. Forget personalized. How do we make learning personal? And all the things that we know about what good learning can look like, I believe technology is at the point where we can take advantage of that, where we can actually take advantage and look at some of that great research and bring some of those things to life, right? We're at the point where that can happen. That's number 1. Number 2, unlike when I took that computer class 100 years ago, when I had never seen a computer, and it was like another decade before I saw another one, computers are part of our lives today. We don't even recognize how computing has become core to our lives. For example, how many of you have not used technology today? Right? How many of you have not used the web? Right? My favorite answer is a teacher sometimes will raise their hand. She'll be like, I have not used the web. I just checked my email. Still my favorite answer. Or I haven't used the web because my kid ate up all my data plan, watching YouTube videos. So how long did that take us to get to this point? I mean, some of us are old enough where we remember where technology was introduced into our lives. Remember, we used to have to call the internet? Like, we used to have to place a phone call to the internet with our home phones, and the internet was busy. And you were okay with that. You're like, the internet's busy, I'll try back later. Right? And what's our expectation today, right? Most of us have little crusties in our eyeballs when we wake up in the morning because we want to, we're instantly on. We're instantly on the internet. We're instantly on technology. We're using it as part of the core of our lives, and it hadn't been that long ago that we didn't do that. What's our expectation with technology? I've seen teachers who I love to death, who are the most patient, most understanding people in the world. Again, remember, I can only have a kid every 10 years. I've seen them turn into a mob at conferences when the Wi-Fi is too slow, right? Or your expectations of technology and what's available to you. And I fly on airplanes a lot, and if the Wi-Fi is too slow, I get frustrated, and I got to remind myself that I'm traveling at 40,000 feet and 535 miles an hour. And if that's true for us, what does that mean for a generation of kids who don't know any better? Who don't know that the world existed before Google? Who don't know that the world existed before smartphones, before laptops, before tablets? A generation of kids who don't know that the world existed before Wi-Fi. Tell a 10-year-old kid that you're going to go visit a place that doesn't have Wi-Fi and see what reaction you get. Like, what? Are we going camping? Where are we going? Like, where is this place? I got to go. Yeah, definitely I got to take pictures and post it on Instagram. Like, where is it? Like the idea that there's places that don't have Wi-Fi is foreign to this. And so here we are having debates about whether we should be using technology in education when what we should be doing is talking about how we take advantage of the fact that they don't know any better, right? The fact that this is the world that they're born in. Now, it's important to point out that I'm not saying that this generation is different than we are, but they think about learning in a different way, right? We waited for things to be built for us, where this generation is going out and pulling that learning on their own. So this is a picture of my 15-year-old when he was 13, when he brings his computer into my office and shows me his lines of code, because he learned how to program in Java, because he played Minecraft at the time. He doesn't play, he's more of a League of Legends guy now, but he was playing Minecraft at the time, and he was building one of his casino games, wasn't making enough money. I kept waiting for the FBI to break down my door, but he was showing me his lines of code. He taught himself how to program. He taught himself how to code because he knows how to. He just assumes that it's there for him, right? How do we take advantage of that? We have to keep reminding ourselves that this generation thinks about learning from a different perspective. How do we focus on it? How do we make sure we can use technology to take advantage of that? Now, when we talk about the future, we talk about the skills that these kids need. They end up being very human types of skills. And we did a survey with the Economist and came up with this list of top 10, or the top skills that are currently needed in the workplace. And even that, when I look at that slide and I think about what's on that slide, when you start talking to Generation Z and you start looking at what Generation Z thinks about, 41% of them want to work on their own. They don't even want to work for you, right? So these skills are going to be important not just to the workforce, but to them, because they might create their own workforce, right? But this list, and for those of us who are old like me, that list has been the same for a long time, right? Critical thinking, problem solving, communications, collaboration, those types of things. So let's talk about some of these real quick. The first, and one of the things that I despise the most, is this idea that we ask kids, what do you want to be when you grow up? We still ask kids that question, what do you want to be when you grow up? When in reality, one, we've already made an assumption that there's jobs that they're going to end up doing that don't exist today. And two, even if there wasn't, how would they know what they want to be, given the level of experience that they have, or given the fact that jobs change all the time, given the fact that we combine and make up new things almost every day. There's new things to do. Right? So I think we should start asking new types of questions. And so one of the questions that I like to start with is this idea of asking kids, and I'm going to ask the 800 of them that are in a room on Friday, what problem do you want to solve? Right? What problem spins in your head? And it doesn't have to be a global problem. It doesn't have to be solving world hunger. It could be making cars go faster, or making cars drive themselves. Right? Or making vacuum cleaners quieter, which you think probably would have solved by now. But those types of things, it could be anything, right? It's the computational thinking that goes into problem solving. It's the process that you go through for problem solving. When you ask a kid, what do you want to be when you grow up, you're asking them, who do you want to go work for? When you ask them what problem you want to solve, you're getting closer to that magic triangle of motivation, right? Which is autonomy, mastery, and purpose. That they can actually start driving some of that learning. Because I can ask a kid, what do you need to learn to solve that problem? Where can you start learning that problem? What websites are available? What information's out there? Who's already solving this problem? Who can you collaborate with? What research is there? What videos, documentaries, and so on? You can start getting them to dive into creating some mastery about what it is that they want to solve. So that's one. Two is this idea that we talk about failure. We need to teach kids how to fail, and I totally agree, and that's cool, but I often feel like failure has an opposite word, which is success. And in school, we have this failure versus success thing. And in reality, we learn from everything, right? We learn from failures and successes, and we're constantly iterating, constantly changing, constantly making things better. If you're using Google Apps, for example, we update Google Apps, what is it? Whoever's in the room, 200 plus times a year, right? If you're using Chromebooks, we have a new version of the operating system every 6 weeks. We're constantly iterating. How do we teach our kids that there is no endpoint, that they're constantly moving, constantly iterating, constantly doing things in a different way, as opposed to saying, oh, you got a B+, great, you're done, right? We don't live in that world anymore. So that's the other part, to make sure that we focus on building those types of skills. We want to make sure that we're focused on real collaboration skills. We say collaboration in education, but we don't mean it, right? Because education is set up as a single-player sport. The problem is we live in a team-based world. It's my 15-year-old who's responsible for his grades, his assignments, his tests. Imagine you give out a typical test, and 2 kids at the end of the test come up holding the test together and say, we decided to combine our skill set and work on this together. What would the reaction be? Why are we teaching kids that collaboration is cheating? Right? We need to teach kids real collaboration, the ability to listen, to ask good questions, the ability to change your mind, the ability to build consensus, the ability to get along with people, even when you don't agree with them, right? Real collaboration skills, because that's the world that we live in. We live in a globally connected, network-based, knowledge-based economy where you need to work together. And not to get cheesy, because I'm not that cheesy of a guy, there's something comforting in knowing that when I work on something, that it's only going to get better when I put it in front of someone else who's going to make it better for me, right? Who I can say, hey, look, I got this far, and I need your expertise to help me bring this to the next level. Because that's the way we work, and that's the future of how we get things done. And then finally, we want to make sure that we're building strong digital leaders, and that we're not just worried about digital consumers, and that we're just not worried about people who just use the internet or one of those types of things. We want to make sure that the skills that they're building are strong skills around search. Like, most of us are terrible searchers. We don't admit it, but we are, right? God forbid the thing that you're looking for doesn't show up on the first page of your Google results. You're like, what? There's a page 2? I had no idea. Right? Or to look for information, to find things, to vet things, or the fact that information comes at us at such a fire hose speed. How are kids going to learn how to make sense of that information? How are they going to create digital portfolios? How are they going to create their digital footprint? Those are the skills that kids need. We live in this digital world and need to be able to create what that world looks like for them. Now, what I think we need more than anything in education isn't necessarily some of the things that you would think you would hear from someone like me, because one of the things that I talk to superintendents all the time about is that there is no future classroom, right? This idea that just tell me what a future classroom looks like is a question that I hear from superintendents all the time. Just tell me what the future model looks like, and I'll just take that model and I'll implement it, right? It's a scalability issue. The truth is, there is no future classroom. It's what we do tomorrow, right? What we do the next day, how we constantly iterate. How do we constantly iterate, innovate in our classes so that we're constantly getting better at what we do? And I'll give you a Google example of what this looks like. Oops, sorry, let me get to here and then I'll come back. This is a Google example of what this looks like, right? This is the original Google.com. This is Larry and Sergey putting some machines together and doing search, right? And doing PageRank, which was called at the time when they put some computers together to do this. Now, this is what a row of servers looks like today, right? And we build our own hardware, our own software, we design everything, everything's us, everything is us, we do everything. And there's 2 things to point out here. Number 1, this is not what Google looked like on Monday, and then this is what Google looked like on Thursday. This took 17 years of the things that you saw on that economist list. Problem solving, critical thinking, communication, collaboration, all those things. And the second thing is that this is not what a data center will look like 17 years from today. There is no future data center. The data center is going to get better the next time we build one, and it's going to get better the next time after that, and it's just going to constantly improve and get better. And that's what I think we need more than anything in education, and I'm excited to see some of those things happen. And I'll go back here a little bit, and because the slides were out of place, but we're starting to see some of that with these student-centric learning models where students are driving their inquiry, they're driving their learning, and computers and technology and all the great tools that we've been building are there to support and enable what that great learning looks like. And that they're doing it in a collaborative way. It's not just them as an individual that's soaking all that in, but they're doing it as a team. They're doing it as they're working on real projects together. Not, again, real project-based work, not just group work. And what's the difference? The difference is when you assign group work, you assign 5 people to work on a paper that one person can write, so then one person writes it and the other 4 skate along, versus real project work, which is your part, would be a glaring hole if it wasn't completed because it's a piece of a puzzle that you're all working together on some project, right? We're starting to see some more competency-based education. I'm really excited. This is a picture that I took of superintendents in Mountain View when we ran them through CS First, which is a program that we have for an after-school computer science program for schools. And I took this picture because, like, if we can teach superintendents to code, we can teach anybody to code. I always joke with my superintendents. But this idea that we can actually build competency and build, and that kids actually can see what they're learning and how that learning creates competency and how that competency leads to projects and how those projects lead to outcomes, and they can start seeing those kinds of things. And so that's really exciting to see our students being able to do that. And so, in my last minute here, I want to kind of like wrap this up and say, this is exciting, right? This is the most exciting time in education history. What you guys are designing, what you guys are building, what our teachers are doing, what our superintendents are administrating is the most exciting time in education history. We are the generation that's creating what the future of learning is going to look like for the next wave of what we do. Our job isn't necessarily to disrupt education. Our job isn't to fix education. Our job is to do what our forefathers did 150 years ago and say, what's the right education model that we need for the future? What's the right education model for the knowledge-based, global-based economy that we're facing? That's what we have to do, and we're at the very, 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 very beginning of this. And my last 30 seconds here, I'll say, I'm part of a team, and this is not a Google thing, except I get lots of great support from people at Google, but I'm building a school in Phoenix called the Phoenix Coding Academy. I'm not building it, sorry. The school district, Phoenix Union, it was my idea that I pitched, but we're building an inquiry-based system where computer science is the language that kids are going to learn for the 4 years that they're there as part of the core of what they do and everything that they do on their projects. And what changes, what's transformational, it's this picture, that group of people that are going to get together and come up with the best models and change it every day so that we can get the results that we're looking for. Thank you guys for staying so long, and have a great day.